Great. Hi, everyone. So as mentioned, my name is Meg McDonald. I work as a senior project and program manager at the Natural History Museum. I've been there for about 14 years. I'm currently the project manager for Fixing Our Broken Planet, which we at the museum love an acronym. So we'll go with FOBP. Anytime you hear us say FOBP in this presentation, that's what we're referring to. But to give you a bit of a context into the Fixing Our Broken Planet gallery and the program around it, this is a new gallery opened in April 2025. It is a gallery that positions the Natural History Museum at the heart of a global community taking action for the planet. It is a showcase of this collective action and ways to tackle the planetary emergency with a focus on solutions being developed at our scientists at the Natural History Museum and beyond. The new gallery builds on the success of a temporary exhibition that we had in 2021 called Our Broken Planet, How We Got Here and Ways to Fix It. That temporary exhibition developed during lockdown and opened alongside the reopening of the museum to the public, welcomed over 1 million visitors in just under a year's run, and was also a finalist in the 2022 UN SDG Awards, so the Sustainable Development Goals Awards. It found a lot of success, and so did its supporting program, led to us putting a permanent gallery in. This permanent gallery has more than 30 stories based in science, brought to life with a display of specimens. But also the gallery features the voices of scientists, young activists, and other stakeholders so that we can give a diverse range of perspectives to the planetary emergency. This gallery has free entry and is underpinned by sustainable design practices, which Gabriella will tell you more about. It's in a newly restored gallery in the old Waterhouse part of our museum, and it's perfectly located right across from the Dinosaurs Gallery to get a maximum amount of footfall from visitors. So the way that we deliver this information on gallery, we've got several different ways that we do it. You can see a couple of examples here. From the top, we have object displays and audio stories. In these, we forefront our NHM scientists. So we talk about the specimens that they use to do the research that they're doing to work towards the solutions that they're looking into for the planetary emergency. We found that actually the voice of the scientist really, really resonates with the public. There's such a high level of trust in the voice of the scientist. So it's a perfect way not only to forefront our science, but to also give a trusted, hopeful voice to people when talking about these large problems facing us and facing nature. We also use infographics, particularly useful when you're trying to explain complicated or sort of jargony things that are associated with the planetary emergency. We have films. We have something called conversation starters, which are meant to pose questions to our visitors, have them ponder certain difficult questions, be able to feed in their response, and then take that away for further discussion away from the gallery. And what you can do labels, and that kind of introduces the hopeful part of our gallery, which is giving people actions they can take away so that they themselves feel empowered to bring about change. Underpinning the entire gallery is this kind of approach that we call the 5 S's. So again, it uses a specimen from our vast collection at the NHM. It features the voice of the scientist talking about the science that they are doing and leading towards looking at solutions to problems that we're facing, and also how society as a whole features in this planetary emergency, not only how we are feeding into the problem, but also how the problem affects us back. All of this is to position the NHM in the public mind as sort of a scientific organization, but also to kind of use this area as a physical backdrop for connecting with cultural, business, and government leaders and policymakers. It positions us as sort of the neutral broker of kind of rigorous science and a convener of scientific expertise. And in order to make sure that this extends on a local, national, and global level, we have our Fixing Our Broken Planet wider program, which you can see is illustrated in this diagram here. We have the gallery there at the top, which is, as I said, our kind of local to South Kensington offer. We have loads of international visitors that come to see it as well, but it also serves as a backdrop for these larger conversations. We also have a learning program which operates at South Kensington for visitor events and also for schools. We have Generation Hope, which I'll get into a bit more in the next slide as well about that. That's about a national program and Find Your Climate Action, which Pippa will talk you through in more detail later on the presentation. And we also have a global tour. So just to give you a little bit more information on all of those individual things, which is on the next slide, please, Gabby. We have a community of practice as part of our national program offer. This brings together people from, we have over sort of 250 organizations across the nation who have individuals as part of this community of practice. It's a network that allows people to share information and knowledge and experiences when talking about the planetary emergency. We have a number of online and in-person events that we run as well. And it's all with a view to help empower more people and create this community where we're really sharing those experience and that knowledge. In terms of global activity, we have Generation Hope. Is an annual event that we hold at the museum, which is actually happening tomorrow until Saturday. We have a number of events that are happening there that range from how to talk to people who have differing views from you to how people got into green careers. It's really a lovely event, and it's happened for a number of years now. And of that, we're drawing on kind of a network of international climate influencers and young activists and platforming them and giving them also a chance to speak to our scientists in front of our visitors. We have a self-build exhibition, which we are doing as well, and a 2D free touring exhibition, which has recently spent some time in organizations in Bangalore. National programs, we do UK festivals where we put out FOBP information, and we also have an interconnected program, which gives grants to small museums and organizations across the nation in order to help them put on their own version of FOBP. I mentioned the learning program there as well, where you can see a number of different things that we run. And then we have our digital program, which has Discover articles that we publish online, and also the mission-led Find Your Climate Action tool, which Pippa will come to. And of course, one of the most important things that underpins this is sustainable practice, particularly when it came to building our exhibition gallery. So I will hand over to Gabriella, who will give you more in-depth information about that.
Thank you, Meg. Hi, everyone. I will take you through the gallery build and the design process of how we got here. Of course, as Meg was saying, very much sustainability really underpins all of our builds, but especially this one for building, fixing a broken planet, where we were addressing the planetary emergency. So we have to be just ultra careful about what are we using, how can we build less but still tell really impactful stories, how can we be really light with our materials, how can we build wisely, being low carbon, and ultimately also being future proof and being robust. So being lightweight doesn't mean we can't take it that literal, because we have a lot of visitors. Our galleries get a lot of wear and tear. So how are we balancing all of these? I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with these big headliners, which are Letty principles on how to build sustainably. And then at the same time, we had to balance the protecting our collections. So that means from a conservation perspective, we do have to use showcases. So that means the use of usually glass, steel, amongst other materials. We also need to protect our collections from fire, hence again, use of showcases and security, safety, pest control. But at the same time, balancing all of that with all of these sustainable principles and sustainable aspirations. So these sustainable principles were applied on fixing a broken planet 1, which was actually our broken planet. How we got here and ways to fix it. Here's an image of the gallery. There was a lot of reuse that went on in this gallery design. It was only reused showcases, so no new showcases. They were all repurposed with cladding. Lighting and benches were reused where possible. And the layout worked very much with this use less, use only what is necessary, and use the specimens that create the most impact over quantity. That was everything that underpinned O Broken Planet 1, but that was a temporary gallery. So at the same time, it was able to be, as I said, more lightweight and was not built to sustain the wear and tear of what is a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year gallery. So for Fixing Our Broken Planet, which is the one that we started designing in 2023, we had to uh, cope with the additional challenges of what is a permanent gallery. So again, we followed our sustainable design principles. We continue to test the sustainable design principles, which are a set of also KPIs that I'll take you through in slides to come. But we decided that as a design team, we needed to get a proper help. We needed also the support of a sustainability consultant because we wanted all of our decisions to be underpinned by research and data of our material choices. So we appointed a sustainability consultant. We appointed them for general research for supporting us whenever we saw a new material. We always look for environmental product declarations, but where there's none, how can you get into that engagement with the market and how can you get as much data as possible and also keep to program because these are not endless design explorations. So we also need to keep to a program of a project and follow RBA design processes. So that sustainability consultant as well supported us by doing whole life carbon modeling under the RICS a carbon modeling standard. So we took things quite seriously. Usually that's done for carbon modeling for actual buildings, but we said, well, let's also take this is the standard in the market, so let's do that for our own gallery. I know that some of you might be familiar with other ways of carbon footprinting, like the Gallery Climate Coalition tool, which is just really fantastic. We also used that for early explorations before we had our sustainability consultant on board. And as I was mentioning, we tested our KPIs, and our KPIs went beyond carbon. They also looked at circular economy, recycled content, how much are we reusing, what's the actual recyclability of our materials after we've used them for the duration of the gallery, and also are our materials truly healthy? And we went beyond the low VOC. We went into using methodologies from BREEAM, from Living Building Challenge, the Red List. Don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but we are Red List materials free. So it's a really healthy gallery. We also looked into what sort of waste would be produced during our construction processes. I'll take you in more detail in slides to come. Procurement and transport. How far away were the materials that we were procuring from the site? And general energy use for audiovisual and for lighting. All of this was tracked, and we at the beginning set a series of targets for all of these. And then it was really fun to see how throughout the concept, detail, and technical, and then also the as-built phases, how these KPIs actually were sustained. So we're really proud of where we ended up with our KPIs and the fact that we're able to meet a lot of them. Again, this is just a typical chart of what we assessed under the RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, whole life carbon assessment, and we included circular economy. This is a snapshot of sort of our day to day with our collaborations with our sustainability consultant of when we were exploring different materiality for gallery plinths. We knew that we were stuck with, for example, things like glass, usually metal work for showcases. But beyond that, we were like, what are the materials holding together a graphic substrate? We knew we wanted seating. What is the fabric for that seating? What is the infill foam used for that seating? What else can we do? At the same time, we couldn't go far too natural because we need to control IPM. Pest management is it's a big one for us, given the nature of our specimens are quite organic. So we need to be really, really careful about that. So again, that really I say fantastic now, but sometimes a bit headachy balance of everything that we had to consider at the same time. This is also another snapshot of how when we were exchanging information, the exchange of information is so important during this process. It almost makes you or breaks you because if you don't have clear processes about how you're quantifying material volume, you could be speaking across purposes for a very long time with manufacturers, with supplier, with your carbon consultant. So we made sure that from the beginning we were sharing information in really clear ways. We shared 3D models. We were making sure we were working with the same softwares. And as well, we were in future on the right hand side, you can see spreadsheets that we prepared for the contractors. So when we went out to get contractors to build this gallery, we sent them out a spreadsheet saying, you will have to adhere to supplying us data in the same way that we've been doing our own information exchanges. And that spreadsheet went beyond what is the square meterage volume of a material. It went into what are all the particles, elements, all very chemical of what is contained in the material, and you have to ask the market for that. So that was big challenge for all of us, and also getting contractors to get on board with that. So knowing these challenges, we knew that maybe the least amount that we're asking of the market, the better. So how can we keep things really simple, and how can we build this gallery with the least amount of materials? So we almost got it down to four, which is glass, steelwork, 3D printed ceramics. So that the 3D printed ceramics came from one supplier. The glass steelwork came from two suppliers. One who was the showcase contractor, the other one a steel manufacturer, because we created these steel hoods to protect our specimens. At the same time, when I say protection of specimens, that's in particular from lighting, which I'll show you in slides to come. We also use recycled plastics, recycled food waste applications for our graphic substrates and for our film booth graphics. So that sort of completed the palette of 4 to 5 materials. At the same time, we were using new forms of a technology of how to build. And I say new, it could be that these things maybe have been in the market 5, 10 years, but even that sometimes, or some of them 1 or 2 years. That is relatively new. And sometimes a lot of the suppliers who were very adventurous but didn't have the EPDs. So we helped them with building EPDs as part of this consultancy. And when they had EPDs, sometimes the environmental product declaration, EPD, sorry, lots of acronyms as MX says, we had to, sometimes they're a bit vague. So again, using that carbon consultancy was really key to this process. Here's a little snapshot of how the plinths that you will see. I don't know if anyone here has gone to the gallery. If you haven't, please come and visit us. We'd love to have you. Here is our all of our plinths were made of these two materials, which is the 3D printed ceramic, which have a lot of recycled content. They're clay based, so completely cement free, etc. And they are also held together by this 3D printed cellulose piece that you can see holding it all like building blocks. That means that the gallery is also fully dismantleable. So that was also a big consideration of what happens next, as in when this gallery moves on. So here is, I guess without further ado, here is a few images of the gallery itself. This is the first thing you see on the left-hand side where it says fixing our broken planet. That's onto a panel of recycled plastic. You can see the ceramic plinths holding everything together, which can be disassembled at any point. Or in the bottom piece, holding all this set works, and they're also quite, they have a weight to themselves, so they were also very helpful to hold things like archways, etc. This is, yeah, another example. You can see the seating that I was talking about, all made from recycled PET. We have a few screens. Having screens or the amount of screens was also part of the learning. We realized really quickly how high in carbon AV is, as I'm sure it's not a big, that one is not a big shocker. And here are the canopies that I was mentioning, made out. These are made out of pure metal. There's such little adhesives throughout this gallery. Everything is bolted, mechanically fixed. because that means they can actually be recycled later on. And then we've been now getting all of our results. So, how much stuff do we use? And that's been really, really important for us. So, this gives you a snapshot of how we did. When we started stage 3, there was very little information. As you start to build information and what are you actually doing, the carbon footprint does go inevitably up. And then also from a benchmark perspective, really, really recently, the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standard has been published some benchmarks. These are for fit out offices. So we're doing really well with that fit out, but right now we're exploring what that 210 contains and are we really comparing apples for apples? So that's where we are in the process. We also looked at beyond the stuff that we use, how do we reuse it later? So here is a snapshot of how we're planning to disassemble the gallery as and when that happens. Hopefully, no, yeah, well, it's not happening for now. So that's everyone has a lot of time to go and visit and enjoy the gallery. And I'll hand over to Pippa now.
Thanks so much, Gabby. So I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about the Find Your Climate Action tool. Starting with the kind of big question, we started with like, why build it at all? How did it kind of fit into the wider program? So as Meg's already mentioned, there are the 5 S's under Fixing Our Broken Planet, including solutions, which we wanted to pick up. We wanted this to have digital reach, the kind of reach only digital audiences can have. So that's kind of why build a sort of web tool. And all of this kind of leans as well into our overall museum mission to create advocates for the planet. So we wanted to create something that kind of answered those questions that folks might have about solutions, actions they can take online. And those questions included, as examples, things like, I feel guilty and powerless. I want to do more for the planet, but I don't know where to start. Or being inspired to take action, pretty common if they come to the gallery or join any of our events, but wanting to know what their next step was. Cool. So yeah, thinking about the audience, first of all, we had a kind of wide audience for the Fixing Our Broken Planet program in general. So that was and still is kind of 16 to 35-year-olds living in the UK primarily, who are interested in kind of being advocates for the planet, potential change makers and activists. To build this, we needed to break down that audience further. So we did a lot of user research that I don't have time to dive into today, but I'm happy to be a data nerd about it later if folks want to. But we came up with different personas, different archetypes, and within that 16 to 35-year-old audience, we found quiet advocates. So these are folks who maybe take individual actions for the planet. They do things that they can kind of take control of. However, they're not quite ready or quite comfortable taking part in community or campaigning actions. So things like joining a local eco group or community garden, or potentially kind of writing to their MP, taking part in protest. That's not quite for them at the moment. And you can see a couple of quotes about the direct quotes from the audience we talked to about that, how they feel about that. In general, they feel, sorry, Gabby, back again, they're still going. They feel guilty about not doing enough for the planet, and they do feel this pressure to be perfect as well. A lot of them were saying things like it can feel like either you go vegan or there's no point. And obviously there is still a point. And those small actions can feel pointless when faced with these pressures. So kind of learning from these audiences, we came up with different ways to encourage action. So things like offering guilt-free choice without checklist pressure. You don't have to complete everything. You don't have to do every action. Do the ones that fit you. Do the ones that kind of fit your niche and your interests. And also showing the benefits to action. And these can be the kind of like individual benefits. So things like saving money, as well as the kind of extrinsic motivations, I guess, like the local community benefits or the planet benefits, or all three. And offering a range of actions as well, so that folks can find that right next action to take from a list. Cool. So what is Find Your Climate Action? And Gabby, actually, I think if you click on the bit to the right, it should play the video. There we go. Yeah, that's fine. It's working. Cool. So kind of 4 key features. You can find the right action. So you can see here, you can filter by benefits of the action, and you can also filter by the effort level that we kind of assigned it, had a go at assigning. And this helps you, yeah, find the right action for you. So if you're only interested in doing a simple swap that saves money, you can do that. The actions themselves are recipe level, not menu level, which is something I took from a Climate Curious podcast a while back. So rather than saying eat less meat, it's like host a plant-based dinner party. And then within each action page, it breaks down both the how of the action, so tips and inspiration on how to actually take the action, but without getting into, long essays about exactly how to do it. And then at the same time, why to take the action. So we've got a big picture stat in there that might help motivate those who need to understand what the impact might be of their action. And we've also broken down the benefits into more detail so you can see exactly how this particular action would reduce waste or emissions. Finally, we've got features that kind of lean on that guilt-free messaging I shared earlier. So you can hide the actions that aren't right for you, and there aren't any goals or streaks. I know it's very tempting to be the Duolingo for actions for the planet, but that really would counter the need of a lot of our audience to be kind of given a list of actions, but not kind of pressured or forced to take them. And you can see there, yeah, hiding it is an option. Cool. Okay, I think Gabby, if you want to move on, yeah. To summarize all that, our problem was that we needed to take more people to take greater action to help the planet thrive, but as an individual, especially our quiet advocates, it could be hard to feel empowered and motivated, and it's hard to find relevant and achievable actions that feel like they're also going to have an impact. Our target audience were quiet advocates. They take some actions already and might be keen to do more, but it needs to fit with their daily lives and their interests. They can be either encouraged to take more individual actions or and more frequently, or they can be nudged to begin taking community and campaigning actions as a step towards becoming what we've called a catalyst, which is those folks who take community and campaigning actions at the moment. So our solution is that we help quiet advocates take more action more frequently with the Find Your Climate Action tool. It's a choice of actions with a range of benefits and effort levels, so everyone can find something they can do without needing to feel guilty about the things they can't. And those actions are achievable, relevant, and specific. And then the kind of last slides, Gabby, sorry. Is a quick kind of run through of some of the learnings and highlights. So we've had some people kind of get in touch with us through the feedback form, and we've had some really lovely feedback, including folks wanting to use the ideas. Maybe some of you are here today. So saying that like it's such a great tool that they love to use it at their own festivals or events. We did a kind of demo of it with a kind of paper pinboard version with just 9 actions and the ability for people to stick pins in the actions they wanted to do or were already doing at the launch of the gallery, and saw a great pickup. That kind of activity in itself, the paper version, has actually been picked up by our national programs team, which is awesome. So we're getting that out to more people and getting more folks to stick a pin in things because everyone loves doing that. Very satisfying. We've also had it picked up as a kind of format from our internal sustainability team, who have created, you can see bottom middle there, they've created our Green Champion scheme with actions that are kind of taking those same principles. So recipe level, not menu level, with tips and inspiration in them. And this time there is a point-based kind of streak system and a leaderboard, because we can do that for internal staff. We've seen the most popular actions be things like mending and repairing clothes, switching to a greener bank, and volunteering at a community garden. And our hypothesis here is that those are less frequently mentioned than the kind of more classic, like eat less meat. or kind of shop less, spend less. So really interesting to see kind of we've got a live survey running in a way of what actions are popular with folks. Since launch, we've had over 20,000 visits as well, and a lot of kind of those have been direct entries. We've had 800 clicks through to resources we've shared, which have sometimes helped kind of lift up and send traffic to smaller organizations as well. However, we do occasionally get feedback, like that last quote, around like the level of the actions. Some folks want to see us do more activism and campaigning. As an arm's length government body, we unfortunately can't do that, but would absolutely love to. And yeah, occasionally have to kind of push back or accept that feedback as well. And back over to
I'll
Meg.
just talk us. Thanks, Pippa. Just got a summary slide here before we let everyone ask us any questions you might have just about what the future is and how we're taking this forward. Um, we've actually found that the gallery has been hugely popular since it opened on the 2nd of April last year. We have had over 2.8 million visitors into the gallery. It reached its first million in only 4 months of being open. We're currently undertaking the summative evaluation of the gallery where we're measuring impact, and it'll help us kind of identify the areas that maybe aren't that visitors aren't finding as impactful. We have committed really to regular updates to the gallery because it is such contemporary science. We need to make sure that we are staying accurate and relevant. The ways that we update that gallery will be informed by summative evaluation, but not only that, but also the continuing and evolving work that the NHM scientists do, and also that external science is doing, and also geopolitical factors that will impact what sort of topics feel the most urgent and relevant. The program will continue to deliver activities, but like the gallery, will also be adapting to changing science, changing public mood, changing geopolitics, changing policy. The lessons that we learned from the work that Gabby has walked you through about the sustainable design and build will be applied to our next huge program of gallery development, which is called NHM 150. This is celebrating 150 years of the museum at South Kensington, and in that we will be opening 5 galleries over the next 5 years. So quite an intensive program of gallery refurbishments and builds. So all of the lessons that Gabby and the team were able to collect whilst doing the work with the sustainability consultant, we will be able to apply to all of those projects. And we also will be embedding sustainability consultants in our design build projects going forward. So we're really serious about taking this forward and making sure that we have set a baseline for ourselves that we are able to meet and able to report against. And we will continue to strive to create advocates for the planet locally, nationally, and globally. You can see how something like Find Your Climate Action is a perfect tool to help us do that. We would have loved for all of the rest of our representatives of activities in the program to come and speak, but we would be here for hours. So if there's any questions that you have for me about the program in general, or for Gabriella about the sustainable design practices, or for Pippa for Finding for Climate Action, we'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you so much. It sounded like we might not have been recording up until then, but Alice has been recording separately, so that's fine. Thank you so much, Gabriella, and Pippa for sharing that. That was really, really great. I do have a couple of questions that I'm full of questions. I would be really interested to know, I guess, maybe Meg, and I actually Pippa and Gabriella about how are you measuring the impact of the program as a whole with guests that have left, once they've left the museum, how do you track what they're doing on the tool if they're not replying and getting in touch. Pippa, how are you tracking once they've left the exhibition? Meg and Gabriella, what are you doing with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question, and it's something that the museum has had to think very hard about how you actually measure creating advocates. We have sort of an advocacy engagement tool that we're able to apply to different levels of engagement that people have with the understanding that sort of a deeper level of engagement, which is what they would have through Find Your Climate Action or something like Generation Hope, where they're specifically coming to the museum and having in-depth face-to-face conversations, is probably a little bit more impactful than someone just stumbling into the gallery and picking up some
Yeah.
information. However, that still has a lot of worth as well, particularly given the numbers that we're seeing through the gallery. So whilst we have that scale that we're applying this to, um, we are also looking as part of the summative evaluation to kind of go back and check in with a small cohort of people who we've engaged with for that. So that gives us a little bit of a glimpse into how much people are taking this forward and how much, though they may say at the exit survey, yes, I'm definitely going away and I'm changing my habits. It
Yeah.
will give us a small glimpse into whether that actually happens or not. I mean, Find Your Climate Action is a great one because as a tool, it allows people to kind of keep track of it themselves. So you're getting a bit more information there. But it is really something where we are kind of limited in following people around to see. So things like our general museum exit survey, which is always on, is going to help us, and we're going to look at ways we can use that to get further information from people, particularly if we have repeat visitors.
Yeah.
Um, and also drawing on information that come from our partners nationally through the national programs, and really doing in-depth evaluation across every single one of our program initiatives that ask a similar core set of questions that'll help us take that view across everything so that we know that we're measuring on the same terms. That'll allow us to come away with a good feeling, a good understanding as well about how we're measuring up across the board with different activities, but measuring against the same criteria. So yeah, it's not easy. It's a really good question. It's something that we're feeling our way through as well. But we're constantly looking at ways that we can make sure that we're gathering data to help us have those insights.
And that actually leads on very nicely to Robert's question. So he was wondering, have you got any lessons or learnings to share about actually how to move visitors from intent to action? Because I know that, as you said, it's really when they've just come out of the exhibit and they're feeling really passionate, it's really positive that people are so enthusiastic. But when you get home and you get back to daily life and it's hard to do. Have you got anything about, I mean, have you seen anything? Have you found anything that's been particularly useful in that way?
We've got a sort of some initial feedback from the summative evaluation that is a little bit insightful about where people aren't going to be doing anything, which I think helps us as well be
Okay.
able to tailor better the way that we are encouraging people to do stuff. So say, for example, there's a certain portion of visitors who don't feel like they should have to change their habits because they feel like the responsibility is largely on industry or government. As in,
Yeah.
like, there needs to be that higher level engagement, and me as a person can't do much to change it. I think with the Find Your Climate Action tool, that kind of, and Pippa, definitely chime in if you think you agree, that sort of helps to mitigate that sort of thinking, given that it gives you that sort of recipe level things you can do, but also outlines the
Yeah.
benefits for it. So there's a clearer path to I do X and Y can be achieved. So I think that helps a lot. Something that we're looking at in some of our other programming, like through learning, kind of our communities learning, and through Generation Hope, is giving people tools on how to be an advocate. So like advocacy masterclasses. What are the tools you need in order to make someone an advocate? So we're empowering people, particularly younger people, um, to be able to act as an advocate. We're giving them those tools. We're teaching them how to be an advocate. And although that's on a small level because we can only hit so many people at one time, you hope that there's sort of a domino effect on that
Yeah.
where they're able to then go out and share with other people. Um, and the last thing I would say, and then this is obviously, these lessons, we continue to learn them, so there'll be more in the future. But I think another really important one that we've found really works is the hopeful nature with which we're pitching
Yeah.
our information. Because if you don't first make people believe that there is hope, they will have no incentive to go off and do the things that we're encouraging them to do. So I think that was really important for us. And that was something that we learned through the first temporary exhibition. Um, and when we pair that alongside using trusted voices such as scientists, we find that actually it is impactful. But the summative evaluation is also coming in. The final one is coming in June. So we'll likely have more lessons then as well.
Wow. And it's been a year then. So you said 2.8 million visitors and 4 million in the first 4 months. And that was and you mentioned April, and I'm aware that we're in April. So does that mean it's been open for a year and you've now got kind of 12 months worth of data to look at?
Yeah, indeed.
Wow, cool.
So we started off the evaluation. We wanted to give it sort of the gallery 6 months in for bedding in, had we had any problems, if we had any snags. And then we started the summative evaluation in January of this year, where they are doing sort of qualitative and quantitative research work. But also something that we have, which I mentioned just in passing, but is an interesting way to gather data as well, are our conversation starters. And those are touchscreens that give the visitor an opportunity to take an opinion on a question. So there may be something that is, particularly where we have things where it's being discussed right now by policymakers. So there's a question that's about mining the deep sea in order to get the resources we need to resource the green economy, to get the lithium
Yeah.
for electrical batteries, to do all of these things, but can we do that because we have such a vague understanding of even like a fraction of what's down there? Like, it's a really hot button topic right now that is being discussed by policymakers. So we put that on a screen and we let people choose. Should we mine the grapes? They can say yes
That's a
or
really
no.
that's a great
Yeah,
data set, isn't it? That's really
it
interesting.
is. It's very casual. We don't take any information about the visitor. They don't have to put in who they are or where they're from or anything else like that. So it's a really casual way just to get, again, like a snippet of information about how the public are viewing these. And we don't give them say right, wrong answer or right answer. It is just measured against how other people have answered. So they get to see how their answer fits in kind of the wider subset of data, like the wider responses that other visitors have put in. And this is a really cool tool too, because it's really easy to update. It's a piece of
Yeah.
software. And so it's really easy for us to pull that data, do a quick analysis on it, and then update it and continue to keep it really relevant and on point.
Thank you. And then, so Gabby, we've got a few questions for you. So Amanda Phillips is asking about I guess that firstly the materials. So was there anything? I know you spent a lot of time, and let's be honest, a lot more time than many other people would spend testing materials, finding the right things. And I know that it's an evolving landscape of what is suitable. But was there anything that didn't perform as you expected on either the good side or the bad side?
So far so good because it's
Right.
only been a year, but in terms of in the research part, yes, we did find out lots of materials, like for example, recycled plastic suppliers who, let's say, they're not using clean energy, then actually is quite a labor intensive process. So then that a carbon footprint of that recycled plastic, which sounds really lovely, is actually really high. So that we did find out thanks to the research that we did. We also found out that, using new technologies, there's always like a learning curve. How are things put together? Like suppliers can have really cool panels, but then they don't know how to fix them because
Yeah.
it's a new material. So it's like how things are put together was a challenge because there was a lot of expectation on, these suppliers are not coming in as systems because they're like, well, we've spent all of our R&D on creating this panel, but then here you go. that panel is it.
Yeah.
That's all we have. So that was just meant more and more design collaboration with our engineers amongst ourselves. We were also really fortunate that we had many of us, some of us in the design studio as well, were bring a specialism in sustainable practices. So we already
Wow.
have specialized in that as on top of also being designers. So at the same time, there was less research had to be done because we came with that to the museum. In particular, my role was I joined the museum about 3 years ago, and it was a role for a designer with an MSc in sustainable design. So there was already, there's already the museum is very much keen that we are all of us are well versed in and beyond, being carbon literate. And we also, some of us who have that specialty, we also disseminate a lot of knowledge along the museum colleagues and design teams. Yeah.
Is it changing? Is that landscape changing quite quickly? I know it's very niche, but if you joined 3 years ago and you did an MSc, I imagine when you started your MSc, the resources available to you in sustainable design were quite
Yeah.
limited.
Well, yeah, I did mine in 2010 when none of this was
Oh,
cool. So, yeah.
well, it's very cool now. It's very cool now.
So,
But yeah, I imagine things have changed a lot.
before you had to go with more niche practices who were interested in sustainability or big multinationals,
Yeah,
who were more interested. But the word sustainability sort of felt a little bit, it didn't go with, sometimes people don't associate it with beautiful designs. It was more associated with
yeah,
things like that look work in progress, cardboard, and but it's like that's not
yeah,
it. It is sustainable. Sustainability can also be very beautiful. So yeah,
yeah.
definitely the industry has come a long way since 2010.
That's a nice positive thing,
Yeah,
I think, to know that things
yeah,
are changing. I mean, and
yeah,
we've got one from Vanita as well. So
yeah.
she says, thank you very much for the presentation, but she wants to know about the origin of the story behind the Fixing Our Broken Planet exhibit. So how did it all get started?
Hmm.
How was the initial funding structured? How did you get it off the ground? What's the background to the project? Any details?
Sure. I'll kick this off because it was a temporary exhibition before it was the permanent gallery, and it was really the success of that exhibition that led us to putting this permanent gallery in place. I mean, I think the first place that we have to start is kind of the changing strategy of the museum, as in it became our key strategy to create advocates for the planet and create create an environment where both people and planet thrive. So the museum adopting that as kind of a core strategy was really the kind of leaping off point. Um, Knowing too that we had so much science that was ongoing that was looking
Yeah,
at exactly this. One of the things that we struggle with as an organization is that we are seen as a museum, and it's actually not that well known that half of our work, for just under half of our workforce are it's active scientists and researchers doing active science and research. So we're always also keen to make that be known more publicly. So it was suggested as to be sort of a free temporary exhibition with what I can now, looking back, say was a very small budget that we were working
okay.
on. And it came up during
Hmm.
lockdown. While we were all in COVID for lockdown. We had paused a couple of projects whilst everything was locking down and everybody was talking about, and it came out of it as feeling like a really um, sort of urgent story to tell. And indeed, in that first temporary exhibition, we have the story of the study of bats and the origin of SARS viruses. So
Oh,
we
wow.
actually talked about that in the first exhibition. So we didn't have a great deal of money, and it was we were developing all during lockdown. Because we were developing it all during lockdown, we asked our scientists to suggest stories. So we had a real long list of stories that came directly from the scientists and the researchers. And our content team were able to kind of distill that down into um, different sort of human-centric zones. So the food we eat, the materials we use, and the energy we use. And we replicated those in the permanent gallery with the addition of one more, which is our health. And these kind of are the fundamental ways in which we talk about the planetary emergency and how we contribute to it, but also how it impacts us also.
Yeah.
That was, but also we also had, where we would have visitor events on site when we have a new exhibition, we were unable to do that. So our kind of events team went online, and by going online, they were able to make it a much more global event where people were tuning in from all over the world, but also where they were getting people to speak from all around the world. And then out of that, we created this kind of network of young international activists and climate influencers, which then we were able to either feature in the gallery or, have speaking at our Generation Hope events, or, be a representative in the program in another way. So that's kind of the various ways in which it grew up. And it was having that be a success and having policymakers want to go to that temporary exhibition. We had Greta Thunberg in it doing an interview. We had a
Yeah.
live link to the COP event. We just found that it was really well received back in 2021. And of course, it's even more of a well-received topic that has more momentum behind it now. So turning it into a permanent gallery just seemed like a no-brainer.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say I remember when Greta did started those strikes, that I think that was just before COVID. It was quite a while ago, but I imagine that the younger generation is really ramping up. So the timing wise, that speaks well, I guess, Pippa, as well, to your quiet audience, because they're now, I mean, they're not so quiet a lot of the time, which is amazing, but it's those people that aren't necessarily ready to go and march in the streets, but they are trying to do things. And leading on, I mean, we don't have loads more time, which I'm really gutted about because I could chat about this all day. But Pippa, one for you. So with this tool, it's fantastic. It's, we've said how great it is. What are you doing with it next? Are you going to kind of continue adding more actions? Are you working with, I don't know, there must be a lot of psychology involved in which actions to suggest that people do and how to tailor them. What are you working on for phase two? Am I allowed to ask that? I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a secret. Yeah, so we're definitely adding more actions. I mean, we launched with about 21, which was kind of the minimum our rule was like no filters are blank before we
Yeah.
launched this. But some of them only had like kind of one or two actions in. So we've been working on beefing that out. I think there's like we're aiming to kind of have about 50 in the coming months. So we're going to
Wow.
keep building out kind of the content of it. Obviously, like because we are quoting stats and sources and the science is also ramping up, we're going to be reviewing the content as well and making sure that it's still accurate. Um, and as we learn more about different actions as well, might be yeah, changing those around. And in collaboration with our marketing team, we that team run a kind of monthly newsletter called Planet Fixes, which you can
Okay.
sign up for. And each month it highlights a particular action out of Find Your Climate Action. So we're kind of prompting people to think about different ones, and we can kind of nudge them a bit seasonally as well, because different times of year. I never want to change my diet around like Christmas and winter time. Very
Yeah.
much like the high energy, high fat foods. So, but
I think
in New Year's
even
resolution, it works.
even that one was, I think the fact that you didn't frame it as a eat less meat, but it's just a enhance something and make it. I think there's a lot of research about how to do it, and I think it's really interesting. And I'd love to know. I don't know whether you have any data on kind of the carbon that tool is saving, and I don't know how you'd even begin to measure it, but I
I
wonder
have
if
no idea.
I don't know.
No.
You're the data person, but I think it's I'd love to know the impact of it. So maybe we can check back in next year and you can have a think about it. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think one more very quick question, because I'm conscious of your time. I know Gabby, you kind of answered it already, and I know you've answered it for Amanda privately. But how were the contractors when you started actually commissioning this? So, it's
Yeah.
how was that? Because I can imagine if there aren't many around, it must be quite hard to get people on board. But are there many around? I don't know.
Well, there are many around that promise a lot, and then it's tougher once you're, in contract. It's also tough because obviously a contractor gets materials and they are, allowed to change suppliers. We're just, we do some research recommendations, but in this instance, they actually went for many of the suppliers that we had recommended because they saw the amount of
Oh,
research we had done for it.
okay.
So that was very good. But there are things like metalwork where there's a supplier to the supplier to the supplier. So getting things like the recycled content of metal sheets of the supplier of the supplier of the supplier who we're not in contract with. The contractor had the best intention at heart, but because they didn't ask the questions to that supplier, to
Yeah,
that other supplier, to the other supplier, sometimes it was hard to get the information, or it took a long time to get the
yeah,
information. So, but we're really happy to say that this carbon footprinting has been with like the minimal amount of assumptions. We've been able to really strip it back and get the information that we needed. But there are instances where the market is simply not there. So that is true
no,
that no matter how much we can do, because there are no, that there's not yet laws that require that suppliers have to declare their recycled content, then it's not always available at the time that
no.
you need it. So that is very much, a plea that obviously, hopefully, things will continue to evolve in a positive way everywhere
Yeah,
for that to happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one more very, very quick
Yeah.
one, but it is very, very quick because I know you're busy. So if I had a magic blue loop wand, a magic green loop wand, and I could, give you everything you needed to make the perfect exhibition, carbon wise, education wise, visitor number wise, what would that look like? Gabby first.
Oh, and I feel maybe it's the end of the day situation, but basic. I think it would look like fixing a broken planet. But we're
Perfect.
yeah, sorry for saying that sort of
No, I
cop
do
out
agree.
answer.
I know.
Sorry, it's
I
been a
agree with
favorite.
Gabby.
I think it's gonna
Yeah.
stay as a favorite for a long time,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, I
Um,
suppose the one thing I would add on would be that ability to track
Yeah,
the impact into
yeah,
being able to know. I would need that blue loop magic wand would be really
yeah,
handy in
for
being
that.
able to get feedback from people to understand, whether they've been able to take those things and whether they feel like they have sort of taken that step up on the advocacy scale, whether they feel like they've increased the things that they're doing, basically to see whether we have kind of brought about the change that we set out to do.
Yeah,
That would be the one thing that I could think of. Yeah, I think that we've done kind of the best that we could,
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
which I think I become more and more proud of kind of that. And the more I hear about how our teams do, the more I kind of understand their impact that they're making globally, nationally, and locally.
No, I agree. Pippa, you're not going to get away with not saying anything for this. I want to hear what do you want? Is it the data tracking on the tool? Is it something completely different?
Yeah, I would echo Meg's point about understanding the impact, really,
Yeah.
actually being able to kind of see that follow through and see that empowerment and advocacy happen.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Thank you so much. We will be everybody that's come to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for supporting this. Thank you, Gabby, Meg, Pippa, for your time. Anybody that's in London, come and see the exhibition. I will be going hopefully this week, so I can report back. And yeah, keep in touch and look forward to seeing more of these galleries. 5 in 5 years is quite ambitious. So best of luck and have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
thank you.
Ruth.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.